So welcome all of you to this experimental session we're running on conscious business, and on the next edition of the eO&P journal, which is E-Organisations and People, which is a publication of AMED, the Association for Management and Education Development, I think, isn't it, Rob? Hello, Rob. I've lost you. Are you there? Paul?
Yeah, I'm here, but Rob is muted, I believe.
He's muted? Why has he muted himself?
He's muted himself.
Why have you muted yourself, Paul? Rob,
you've muted yourself, so just click the microphone thing at the top.
There we are, you're back.
Yeah, I'm back now. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened there. It certainly wasn't intentional.
Is it something to do with the fact that conscious business people say very little?
That's right. We spend all of our time being incredibly aware of what's going on, knowledgeably aware of the situation, and then focusing on purpose.
And if I had that number of books behind me, I probably wouldn't say much these days either.
Very good. So anyway, this is our little call about the second edition of the journal, and on the line we've got Rob Warwick. Is it? I'm not sure of your academic credentials and what title I should give you, Rob, but I'm sure you've got many. And similarly,
but Rob is fine for me.
Okay, that's cool. And similarly, I've got Paul Levy on the call, who's one of the contributors. But we thought it would be nice if Paul, if you don't mind, if you'd ask us a few questions about the second edition and what it's all about. Would that work?
For sure, and I think I've got a question to you, Rob, first, which is, I mean, we're talking second edition. Some journals would have trouble filling a first edition. You know, what has brought so many contributions to this field of conscious business?
I think the reason is well, a couple of the reasons. One is that we've managed to get people to write about conscious business from their own practical experience, and from that to be able to sort of discuss in some depth their sort of perspectives. And then secondly, perhaps most importantly, I just think there's a real thirst and interest in conscious business, particularly when they see what's going on in the world today.
And it's the naive question, but if anybody's watching this and wondering what the hell a conscious business is, could either of you two just give us the really quick definition before we dive into the actual edition itself?
Well, I think there are probably lots of definitions, Paul. And we've kind of shied away a little bit in the journal from giving a particular one, or because there's a danger, I think, that the whole thing can be reduced to just kind of schema and frameworks, and then people kind of lose consciousness of the ideas themselves. So, you know, I'm kind of shying away from that a little bit, but I would say, to me, personally, it definitely includes awareness, and probably, secondly, purpose, and an awareness of that purpose.
And just to give it, again, people just watching for the first time, so what characterised the first edition and what differs in the second? Because we've basically got, you know, an overflow of so much material that you brought out a first journal and then you brought out a second one. So what was in 1 and 2?
The first edition focused on the issue of awareness, awareness of conscious business in what a person does. The second edition focuses on the dual aspects of purpose and practice. What practically people can do in their day-to-day activity to be conscious in business.
And for, again, those listening in that are maybe naive to this, what is the difference between a business and a conscious business and a social enterprise?
Shall I have a go at that? I mean, there's a confusion sometimes around the word social, I think, particularly in this day and age. I mean, social has lots of different meanings, doesn't it? And one of them is that, you know, it has a kind of good connotation attached to it, towards doing good and being ethical and so forth. So when I think about social enterprises, I think about enterprises that are serving some kind of useful purpose in society and so forth. Now, it's perfectly possible that a conscious business will have some kind of higher purpose, and that's a good thing. I think you'd agree with this very much, Paul. I don't think a conscious business has to. A conscious business is one, very simply again, is one that is aware and probably is aware of some of its purpose. Does that help?
Yeah, I guess so. But so how does a business become aware from all the practical stuff in issue 2? What would you glean as some of the highlights for how a business takes its steps forward?
Well, I think that's the big opportunity here. So what we've done in the second edition is just start to give some kind of ideas of kind of practices. I mean, we run these conscious business meetings, which we've been running now for 2 years, and in those are really focused around many of the kind of practices, the things people can practically do to raise awareness. And an example, a very simple example, would be the check-ins that we do at the beginning of all of our meetings, and that we omitted to do today for some bizarre reason, probably because we were messing around with the technology so much. But essentially those practices, there's a couple mentioned in the second edition, and we've been developing a whole load of those, and people have been exploring them. There are many of those around in places like the rest of the AMED journal, the rest of the eO&P journal, in many other editions of it. I mean, they're the kind of practices that you'd expect. They're things that raise awareness, and they can be physical, they can be mental, they can be in all domains.
And I guess I'm asking you, one of the two of you, just to leak out a few specifics then. So if someone's listening in now and watching, and they're a leader in a business, and they're asking themselves, are we a conscious business? And they walk into their boardroom tomorrow, what behaviours are you going to describe that would enable you to say, yeah, that's pretty much a conscious business?
I mean, some of the features would include a company needs to make there needs to be profit, and that's a good thing, and to focus on the on its stakeholders. But it's not just about profit; it's about that sort of awareness of the wider environment in which you're part, and also to build and create a place for further human development and growth and the like. And also to ensure that all those that are involved in the endeavour have some sort of opportunity to influence the outcomes of what it is that you're trying to do. So, and the other aspect is about sort of transparency about what it is you're doing, and how that's having an effect on the different aspects of the company and the wider stakeholders. So those are some of the aspects that might come to categorise a conscious business.
So let me just nudge you further on that. So I can understand how transparency, that kind of links to the idea of consciousness, and also the notion of awareness certainly does, and wider awareness. What about the opportunity to influence the outcome, everybody? I mean, that sounds like a kind of very democratic organisation, but why does that contribute to a conscious business?
That's a really good question. I mean, one of the latter pieces that we've got is around democratic process by Nate Whitestone, and he talks about sociocracy, and I think methods like sociocracy can be really, and holocracy and so forth, can be very useful in helping formulate those kind of democratic means of operating. Personally, I don't think it's exactly the same as saying that a sociocratic business is necessarily a conscious business. I think, and it's true for all of these practices, I think it's possible to be highly transparent and communicate very well without necessarily being conscious in the sense of being aware. So I suppose that's why earlier on I was kind of steering away from kind of trying to give a very simple definition to try and give a list of kind of features that defines a conscious business. Because you can, as soon as you start thinking about that list, you start thinking, well, these are the things we have to do, and then in doing that you may in fact lose consciousness, which is indeed the whole point.
And is that the point that businesses are open systems in dynamic environments, and so if we stop influencing anywhere in the organisation, there's a danger that we fall into complacency and a kind of sleep state. So the actual activity of influencing kind of it creates an energizing person who's more aware and alert.
Yeah. I think there could be a problem when talking about frameworks for conscious business or anything else, that it implies some form of, I don't know, some pious dry ground over which you're sort of looking at the swamp and the messiness of everyday life. And what we're wanting to do is to pay attention to the messiness of everyday life and how one could be conscious in that environment. Yeah, that's the thing that we want to sort of pay attention to, that's slightly different from how other people talk about conscious business.
That reminds me of Russell Acuff and his descriptions of complex adaptive systems as being kind of messes, because I think that's exactly right. It's, you know, it's all very well, isn't it, to try and simplify things down to very simple lists, but we all know that life is complex and very, very messy. And as Rob said, kind of being aware of that messiness and ourselves within it, to me, is that's really what conscious business is about.
Yeah. And just to illustrate that, there was one article from somebody called Sam in the second edition, talking about his practice working in a healthcare environment. And one thing that's come over that's really striking is that whilst the different people can agree upon the purpose that they want to achieve in terms of caring for these vulnerable people, what transpires in the article, and how we've discussed this article in the editorial, is that from the different perspectives in that messiness, the very thing that you don't want can then manifest itself. And I think what Sam has done in a spirit of open vulnerability, if you like, is to point to that challenge and that difficulty in doing things that you believe is right.
And Rob, in terms of commissioning a journal article, a whole journal on this kind of thing, is conscious business grounded in decent literature and kind of academic credibility, or is that something yet to come?
I don't think there isn't so much an area of dedicated literature to this. I think it spans lots of different areas, from I don't know, ethics or power, all sorts of different areas that can be brought and focused into the area. But yes, I mean, there are people that write on conscious business, conscious capitalism, but it's not a discrete area in itself, or at least it's not certainly not a mature area.
And Pete, and as a practitioner, conscious business, isn't this just another buzzword for consultants?
That's a great question. Can I just go back to the previous point though, because one of the the question you asked about, you know, the literature and stuff. One of the articles we have is a piece on the overlap between OD, organisational development, and conscious business, for example. So as Rob says, I think that's an example of how conscious business kind of is perhaps a kind of interdisciplinary type thing that's touching on a lot of different other kind of subject areas.
Yeah. But yeah, go on. Answer my other questions. More interesting.
Your other question. That's a great question. I really hope not. I think it's much more than that. I suspect conscious business will evolve and grow, and hordes of consultants will get involved and make money out of it and all those kind of things. But I think it's more related to changes in society, such as the feminization of the workplace, the aging workplace, and the consciousness that kind of arises because of that, and probably increasing standard of living, and the fact that people are living longer and so forth. So it feels to me more like, I certainly don't think it's being driven by consultants. I think it's more like something that's happening in the complex adaptive system that is the world and our social systems, and some people are just responding to that. I mean, and ourselves, I mean, we're just a tiny part of that. There are many other organisations. On our wiki we have a list of probably 20 or 30 other organisations who, in this kind of interdisciplinary sense, are doing things that are highly aligned with what we're calling conscious business. So I think it's a bigger thing than any consultant.
And Rob,
sorry, Paul, can I just say one thing on that? What we're trying to point to, in addition to the sort of some of the techniques, but it's also to illustrate that it's perhaps a way of thinking. It's a way of thinking for both consultants, but also for clients and for other people. So it's a more of a way of approaching business, not necessarily to be reduced down to a fixed number of things that a consultant can sell as part of a portfolio of products.
Can I add something to that, which is that I think that yes, it is. That's absolutely right. It's more than a way of thinking. It's also a way of feeling and a way of intuiting and a way of sensing. And one of the pieces we have in the journal is some yoga practitioners. So they're talking about very physical processes and practices as well. So it's probably beyond the realms of any single set of consultants to provide all those services.
Well, I can tell you're both very enthusiastic about this because it's very rare that I can't get a word in edgeways in a conversation. What surprised you most from all the material you've read, Rob?
I think what surprised me most is the diversity of pieces that people. It was quite a specific challenge to ask them to put their own experience at centre stage and from which to develop their arguments and all the rest of it. And what surprised me is the differing ways that people have done that, from Jack in the first edition where he talks about his entrepreneurial experience, through to people, as I said, Sam and his experience of working in a healthcare sector. But yeah, I think that's the thing that sort of struck me most is the way people have engaged with it and the diversity of pieces.
And final question, as we wrap up now, to you, Pete. I'm a high street bank trying to get back into the black. I'm one of the government departments trying to deal with the floods, and I'm a small business just emerging from the skin of my teeth from recession. What general advice might you give to them to take a step towards becoming a conscious business?
Read the journal. Obviously, they've got to do a bit of reading and thinking. Yeah. I mean,
just a couple of nuggets from it.
I would say, well, I guess it's in there somewhere. It's buried. I think the simple answer to that is probably to slow down and reflect a little bit. I think in our modern pace of life, it's quite hard. There are lots of things that work against awareness, including our own desire not to be aware. So I think it can be really helpful just to kind of slow down, to breathe, spend a bit of time, kind of relax, and maybe talk to other people about it as well, and validate that those kind of behaviours aren't actually crazy or wacky. They're just very sensible ways to approach life and business.
So, Rob, how can people get hold of this journal, which is, there's 2 editions, the 2nd edition is out, the practitioner's one. Where can they get hold of a copy?
They can get a copy from AMED, the Association of Management Educators and Developers, and just type in AMED into Google and it will be there.
If all 3 of us were one person, we'd have been on the planet for well over 150 years. So it's been a delight to talk to you. Thanks, Rob Warwick and Pete Burden.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks, Paul. Thanks very much.